to see that the needs of entrepreneurs had shifted. And so, you know, when I started Motive with my friends, it took us $5 million just to ante up into the game. We had to hire a team, we had to buy Oracle servers, we had to host them on Solaris boxes, and then host it at Exodus. And it was all really expensive. And I was just seeing over and over again that 500,000 was the new 5 million. You know, and so Kevin Rose, the first time I ever met him, he had started Dig for $1,500 over a weekend. And that was just unheard of in my experience as an entrepreneur. And so, I sort of had this epiphany one night, and that was that it wasn't just going to be about the fact that starting a company was less expensive than ever before. The world was going to figure that out soon. But the significant insight was going to be that if 500,000 is what it takes to get into the game, and that's going to decline over time, the relative power of the entrepreneur would be permanently shifted relative to the VC. If it takes $5 million to get started, there's fewer people you can get $5 million from. If it takes $500,000 or $50,000 to get started, which, you know, now, you know, you can, if Paul Graham accepts your application at Y Combinator, it costs next to nothing to get started. The relative importance of investors would decline, and the relative importance of great entrepreneurs would increase. And so my observation was that if capital was relatively unimportant in the future, that entrepreneurs were going to have all the cards, and that the winners in the VC industry would be the people that provided capital as a service, and that, you know, dynamically configured their services around the entrepreneur in real time. And that if you could be sort of a new era of dynamic firm, that you could sort of change the game. There are about 10,000 startups funded a year by angels, and about 10 plus or minus 5 a year are truly special. You know, they get to about 100 million of revenue within 5 years of getting their first Series A round. And so I thought, that's what I'm in it for. I'm going to hunt thunder lizards. That's my job. And so whenever somebody asks me my job, that's what I say. I hunt thunder lizards. And, you know, I get about 10 to 12 shots on goal a year. And if we get 1 or 2 a year, we have a chance to be really good. Because the other part of how I hunt thunder lizards is I make earlier and riskier bets than a lot of other people. And so, you know, because I believe 500,000 is the new 5 million, you know, I'm content to invest $500,000 to $1 million before anybody else yet believes. You know, it's still kind of a controversial, crazy idea. But there are a couple of observations that I've had about thunder lizards lately, and this is where sort of maybe the difference between for-profit business and nonprofit and cause-oriented businesses start to blur a little bit. So, for example, the companies that we've invested in that have done the best are the ones that made not just a product, but they made meaning. So one of the things I noticed was that marketing and products used to be sort of like interrupting a consumer to force them to listen to your message so that you can buy their stuff. And maybe you need their stuff, maybe you don't. But I got something to sell, and I hope I can talk you into buying it. But what I started to see was that more and more the companies that were winning didn't think that way. They were thinking about creating some fundamental good by increasing the pie of value so massively that they'd make economic benefits later, but they would just create such a pie of extra value that they were destined to be successful. And then the other thing I noticed was that they really focused on the product. The companies that were winning were companies that thought, I'm going to have a product that just kicks ass, where the so what and the who cares factors are instantly addressed, and when somebody sees it, they know it's going to be good, just by seeing it the first time. And then my job as a marketeer is going to be just to syndicate the truth, because the product will market itself. And so, you know, that's the part that I saw the overlap with what I've seen with causes. You know, the great causes also have that attribute where marketing is not about tricking somebody or even really persuading somebody. It's teaching them to buy your cause. Your cause is already something they want if they're educated and they know the facts. So it's teaching them to buy. And in order to do that, in order to view marketing that way, you have to have a cause or a product that you believe is sufficiently awesome that no smart customer would ever refuse it if they knew the facts. So that was kind of the first thing that I noticed was the blur between causes and good companies. And I'd go so far to say that every great investment we've ever done was controversial but meaningful when we did it. When we invested in Twitter, people said, look, it's just trivial, you just say that you're going to the bathroom, or you just say you had a sip of wine, and they can't even keep the freaking site up. So why would you, and they don't even have a roadmap or revenue model, why would you invest in that? But it just felt like enabling tens of millions of people to express themselves through microblogs had a chance to be really meaningful. And similarly, you look at a company like even Rally, where we're sitting right now, the cause economy is just huge. And if somebody figured out how to take the cause economy online in a real way that leveraged the power of social media and the power of connected network effects, that could be a huge business that would transform people's lives. So I wanted to talk about just a few things that I've seen. If you decide to go down the route of being a thunder lizard, whether it's as a cause or as a business, there are a few techniques that I've seen that have been helpful for people. So the first thing is an experimental mindset. Very often when you're inside of a company or an organization with a lot of passionate people, you get a lot of arguments about what should be done. And you get very passionate voices on both sides of the argument. And very often what happens that's unfortunate is inside the building you get into my vision versus your vision kind of arguments. And companies and causes don't get murdered, they commit suicide because they just don't ship, or they just don't solve a value proposition problem. Or they kill themselves inside because they just can't resolve their differences and resolve it and move on. And so an experimental mindset says, you know what, we're not going to spend time debating your vision versus my vision, because facts are stubborn and they exist outside the building. They don't exist inside here, they exist out there. And the only way we can really figure out what the facts are is to first think about, imagine that we're scientists. We have a hypothesis. So it's no longer you're right versus I'm wrong, or I'm right versus you're wrong. I have a hypothesis. You have a hypothesis. Even better, let's not even tie it to a person. Let's list a set of hypotheses on the board. And let's think like scientists. Let's think about an experiment that we would run where if a certain set of outcomes happen, we have validated the hypothesis. And if a certain set of outcomes don't happen, we've invalidated the hypothesis. But there will no longer be room for theoretical instinctive argument, because we will have converted a set of assumptions to a set of facts. And facts win. What a lot of people don't realize is that the essence of great product marketing is you just have to do the work. It's not intuition. It's not pulling a message out from thin air. It's informing your intuition by relentlessly converting assumptions to fact. And being the company that people complain, man, all you guys ever do is come up with more assumptions that you test. Because those companies, increase the probability of success dramatically. My observation is that you don't really manage your time, you manage yourself. And that's the reason that if you don't manage yourself, no tool will help you. Tools will help you be more efficiently busy, but only you can manage yourself. And so what Nat does that I think is really cool is every Sunday he gets an index card. And he writes down his objectives for the week. And they can't be more than an index card. And he writes them in the past tense as if they happened on Friday. So it's Sunday night, he's by himself, and he writes. So I'll give you an example. We were working together with Rally to try to help raise a round on AngelList. So an example of a goal that I might put on an index card on a Sunday night would be help Rally raise. I'm grateful that we helped Rally raise more than $5 million with the help of AngelList. And you write it in the past tense, and somehow when you write it in the past tense, it sort of focuses you more on what really has to happen. And then Friday afternoon, after the beer bust or after whatever you do on Fridays, you just get out the index card which of these happened? You know, they ought to be binary. You ought to be able to check them off like they're binary. Now, Nat uses it in a couple of ways. First of all, he has that card next to his monitor on his computer, sees it all the time. Somebody cancels a meeting with him, or some time frees up, or unexpectedly, bam, he's looking at the card, attacking one of those goals. But the other thing that he does on Sunday night is he qualifies his time ruthlessly. So he'll look at his calendar and he'll say, how many of these meetings do I really have to do? And how many of them are important enough that I'm going to risk not making these goals happen this week? The last point I wanted to make was on teams. When I was at Motive and we were first starting, we got really interested in this paper that came out in the 70s that studied the NASA moon landing. And I still look at the NASA moon landing as one of the most insane achievements ever. I mean, you just think back to it. There weren't any personal computers or cell phones or GPS. They put a freaking piece of aluminum into space and landed on the moon and came back. In 1969, before HP even had the pocket calculator. I just look back on, I'm just blown away that they pulled that off. And so one of the things that they did is some people studied, how did this team do that? And what causes some teams to just make spectacular accomplishments compared to other teams? And they had this term for it, they call them hot teams. You know, what makes a hot team? So what characterizes a hot team are a couple of things. First of all, they have to believe that the goal is extraordinarily meaningful. The second thing is they have to believe that they can make it happen. The third thing is the management of the company or the cause has to have a very clear way to delegate decision rights. So let's just take an example of shipping software. If you're the management team, you can define the date it ships or the features, but not both. Because if you as the management team define both, you're taking away the power of the team to feel truly empowered. I guess the one last thing, and I probably don't even have to say it to this group, is you know, not long ago I was in the airport coming back from a wedding, and I'm in the security line, and there's the TSA guy, and he goes, "How are you doing?" And I said, "I'm great, how are you doing?" And he goes, "What does it look like? I'm living the dream." TSA guy. And it just sort of struck me that, you know, there are a lot of people in this world who have jobs they're not passionate about. And, you know, to me, that's like one of the greatest curses that you can have. You know, most of the world lives in environments of injustice, of undemocracy, of, you know, if you were born in bad circumstances, that's just pretty much what you've got the rest of your life. And so I always look at it like, if you have a chance to be one of the 0.1% who's not that, if you're not doing something you're passionate about, you're just flunking a cosmic IQ test. And if you do pursue what you're passionate about the rest of your life, the probability that you'll be awesomely successful is very high. The younger you can learn that and internalize it and visceralize it and truly live that, you'll look back on your life and be glad, because you'll get to, it's sort of like the Dalai Lama once said, you know, if you live an honorable life, you get to enjoy it twice, because you get to look back on it. And living a passionate life is the same thing. You know, you look back on it, you get to enjoy it twice. And so, you know, don't waste your time on something you're not passionate about. No matter what it isn't worth it. There's no amount of money that's worth the short time you have on this earth to waste. So anyway, that's about all I know. So are any questions? Or yes,